He said I was too young, but his eyes told a different story. That summer, every look, every silence felt like a secret we weren't supposed to keep. Some love stories don't need to be spoken, because the way he looked at me said it all. Please don't forget to subscribe Blind's Thoughts. When I think about that summer, the air still feels heavy with secrets, the kind that stick to your skin long after the heat fades. I was 19, barely old enough to be taken seriously, but old enough to notice the way a man's eyes could linger longer than they should. His name was Jack Whitmore. He'd been my father's best friend since high school, the kind of man everyone trusted without a second thought. He owned the hardware store downtown, drove a truck that always smelled faintly of sawdust and coffee, and carried himself with that quiet confidence men twice his age envied. He was 40, widowed, and careful with his words. Too careful. When he came to help my dad fix the porch railing that summer, I remember standing by the screen door, pretending to scroll through my phone. But really I was watching him. The way his shirt clung to his back. The way his hands moved steady and sure with the hammer. He caught me once. Just once. His eyes met mine for barely a second, but something in them flickered, a recognition, a restraint, and maybe something darker that scared us both. Later, I'd hear him tell my dad, "She's growing up too fast." And my dad laughed. "You sound like a worried uncle." Jack just smiled, that half smile that meant he had more to say but wouldn't. That night, I lay awake, replaying the way he said "too fast." I didn't want to be fast. I just wanted to be seen. And God, the way he looked at me, it made me feel like I finally was. By mid-July, he started coming around more often. Said he was helping with house repairs, but there wasn't much left to fix. He'd sit with my dad on the porch, drinking iced tea, while I read a book on the steps, pretending not to listen. Every now and then, he'd ask about college, about the things I wanted. He'd say things like, "You've got your whole life ahead of you, kid." "Don't call me kid," I'd tease, smiling at the challenge. He'd glance away, jaw tightening, then look back with that same measured tone. "All right, Miss Miller, then." The way he said it, soft but weighted, sent a strange chill through me. When August came, my parents decided to visit my grandmother in Chicago for a week. I stayed behind. I told them I needed to work on my art portfolio for college. Truth was, I just wanted to feel independent, to test what it meant to be alone. Jack offered to check in, make sure the house was safe. I pretended not to care. "Sure," I said, "if you have time." He had time. The first night he stopped by, it rained hard. I remember the thunder shaking the windows. I was barefoot in an oversized sweatshirt when I opened the door. He stood there, soaked through, his hair slicked back and eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. "Power's out on my side," he said, stepping in. "You okay?" I nodded, heart pounding. The air between us buzzed, something neither of us wanted to name. We sat in the living room by candlelight, the sound of rain filling the silence. He told me stories about when he and my dad were my age, sneaking out to drive to the lake, chasing the kind of freedom I was still dreaming of. At one point, I said, "You ever wish you were young again?" He smiled faintly. "Sometimes." Then I remember how dangerous it was to feel that much. The way he said it made my pulse quicken. There was a moment, a brief, fragile one, when our hands almost touched across the table. Then he pulled away, clearing his throat. "You should get some sleep." When he left, I stood by the window and watched him walk into the rain until he disappeared. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. In his sharp, neat handwriting, "Stay safe. Call me if you need anything." The days that followed felt strange. I'd wake up thinking about him, go to bed hearing his voice. I told myself it was harmless, a crush built on fantasy. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just me who felt it. A few days later, I went to his hardware store, pretending I needed paint supplies. He was behind the counter, wearing a gray t-shirt that looked too good on him. When he saw me, his expression softened, then hardened, like he'd been expecting me, but wishing he hadn't. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, eyes darting toward the two other customers. "I just needed some white paint," I replied, forcing a casual smile. He sighed, rang up the can, and slid it across the counter. His fingers brushed mine for half a second, and it was enough to send electricity through me. That night he called. His voice was low, tense. "Ava, you can't keep looking at me that way." "I'm not looking at you anyway," I lied. "Yes, you are," he said, "and I'm not blind." Silence stretched. I could hear his breathing, rough and unsteady. Then, softly, "You're too young." But he didn't sound like he believed it. I didn't sleep that night. Every word echoed in my head like a confession neither of us could erase. 2 days later, I saw him again. I was out walking near the lake, sketchbook in hand, and he was fixing a fence for one of the neighbors. When he noticed me, he froze mid-swing, hammer still in the air. "Didn't expect to see you out here," he said. "I live here," I teased lightly, trying to mask how nervous I felt. He wiped the sweat from his brow. "You should be getting ready for school, not walking around making trouble." Maybe I like trouble. He looked at me then, the kind of look that stops time. Then, almost to himself, he muttered, "Yeah, I know." I didn't know who moved first, but suddenly we were standing too close. The smell of sawdust and sweat, the sound of his heartbeat almost drowning out my own. He stepped back, jaw clenched. "Don't make me the bad guy, Ava." "I'm not," I whispered. "You're the one who keeps showing up." He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "You have no idea what you're doing." Maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't. But I knew what I felt. And so did he. By September, I left for college 2 towns over. We didn't talk after that. Not a call, not a message. But sometimes when I drove home on weekends, I'd see his truck parked by the diner or passing by on Main Street. He'd lift his hand in a small wave, and I'd do the same. Nothing more. Nothing less. Years passed. I grew older. Wiser, maybe. I dated, loved, lost. But no one ever made my heart race the way he did that summer. Then, one fall afternoon, I came home for a visit. My father had passed away the year before, and I was sorting through his things when I saw Jack again. He looked the same, older, a few more lines around his eyes, but still carrying that quiet strength. He stood in the doorway, hat in hand. "I heard you were back." I smiled faintly. "You still checking in?" Old habits die hard. We talked for a while about life, about loss, about how time changes everything, but feelings never really disappear. At one point, he said, "You turned out exactly like I thought you would." "How's that?" I asked. "Strong, beautiful, unreachable." I felt something twist inside me. After all those years, the current between us hadn't dimmed. It had just learned to behave. When he left, he hesitated at the door. "You were never too young, Ava. I was just too scared." And then he was gone again, like every summer storm that comes hard, shakes your world, and leaves behind a silence that hums with what almost was. Sometimes when I drive past his old store, I still half expect to see him there, leaning against the counter, pretending not to notice me. And I still wonder what might have happened if either of us had been brave enough to let the moment last. But maybe that's the point. Some stories aren't meant to be lived. They're meant to be remembered. Because the truth is, he never stopped looking at me that way, and I never stopped feeling it.